Since its inception in 1997, the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation has fought many preservation battles. Noteworthy victories include Tahquitz Plaza, the J.W. Robinson's Department Store, Santa Fe Federal Savings and Loan, and La Serena Villas, to name just a few. Most of these preservation efforts took place over just a few years. However, the Town and Country Center effort is exceptional, both in its duration and in the variety of tactics and strategies that were used over the course of the preservation advocacy. Hi, I'm Gary Johns. I first became aware of the Town and Country Center in 1969. On a winter vacation in California, my parents took a day trip to Palm Springs, came to the Town and Country Center, and had lunch in the restaurant upstairs. After lunch, my mother and my aunt sat on a bench in this very location. The bench is long gone, but the Town and Country Center remains. The Town and Country Center was designed by two famous architects, Paul R. Williams and A. Quincy Jones. One of the best examples of late modern architecture in Southern California, the center is an important early mixed-use development. Architecturally noteworthy for its pedestrian-friendly courtyard, it was once a thriving set of stores, businesses, and apartments anchored by the Town and Country restaurant. However, due to various economic trends, businesses moved out and the center sat vacant for many years. Over the course of the advocacy, we came to realize that it was not just a question of convincing some city council members about the value of the Town and Country Center. We had other stakeholders in the community: business people, neighborhood leaders, city staff, members of various city boards and commissions, even the local media. Some of these people and organizations wanted to support our advocacy, others did not. Well, there were some notable efforts made prior to 2009 to raise awareness about the center. The dramas of that summer made us realize the need for an advocacy strategy, a game plan. The most alarming thing we came to realize was just how much ignorance and misinformation there was about the center. So one thing we did was create a document called The 10 Myths About the Town and Country Center. While it was only 4 pages long, and in hindsight a bit contentious in tone, we were afraid this set of buildings was going to be torn down, and we had no intention of letting that happen. So in the heat of that summer of 2009, we went door to door along Palm Canyon Drive, handing out over 200 copies of The Myths document to every business that would take one, talking to those who would listen and making the case for the rehabilitation of the Town and Country Center. We were inspired by how supportive most business people were about the idea of restoring the center, and how enthusiastic they were about historic preservation in general. While we were doing our door-to-door advocacy with Main Street businesses, Board member Patrick McGrew had already submitted the Class 1 Historic Site nomination for the Town and Country Center, and the nomination had started its way through the city's bureaucracy. In early June of 2009, the nomination was narrowly approved by the city's Historic Preservation Board, setting the stage for a city council hearing. On June 24th, the Palm Springs City Council voted unanimously against the historic site designation of the center, despite significant public support and an endorsement from California's Office of Historic Preservation. This was a huge setback and an enormous disappointment, but we did not give up. In 2011, PSPF board member Ron Marshall proposed inviting the president of the National Organization of Minority Architects, Sanford Garner, to Palm Springs. Garner is a great admirer of Paul R. Williams, and we hope that he could assist us in our advocacy for the preservation of the center.
Good morning. This is Saturday, April 30th, 2011. I'm Patrick McGrew, a board member of the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation. I'm here today with Sanford Garner, the president of the National Organization of Minority Architects. Do you have any ideas or information you'd like to share with our city council about the importance of this complex?
Well, that's a tough one. I think I would say to them, you have a beautiful city here. It's full of great architecture, but not so full that you can afford to lose a building as important as the Town and Country Center. I would say the Town and Country Center is an historic resource that other cities would envy. Treasure it, understand the greatness of preservation, and please don't view it as a disposable commodity.
Garner flew to Palm Springs, toured the Town and Country Center, and immediately appreciated the historical importance of the complex. He wrote a letter from his organization to the mayor of Palm Springs asking the city to support the preservation of the center. This put our effort on the national stage and showed that preserving the Town and Country Center was more than just a local issue. To continue the advocacy's momentum, we commissioned a group of consultants to do a sustainability assessment on the center. The result was a scholarly analysis of the potential environmental impact of bulldozing the complex, complete with charts and graphics. The 40-page study was delivered to each Palm Springs City Council member and to every city board member and commissioner we thought might care. Unfortunately, the study received little notice. Preservationists are always learning from each other. So we borrowed a somewhat novel approach taken by a preservationist group on the other side of the country.
Many years ago, there were a group of preservationists in Miami Beach in Florida. And they knew the beauty of the Art Deco buildings, the historic significance. However, the local government and the developers had a different agenda, and preservation wasn't part of that agenda. And so the local preservationists took their case to the state. They sidestepped cleverly. The local government and the developers took their case to the state. And long story short, we now have one of the most world-renowned Art Deco historic districts thanks to their efforts. Because there was an agenda by the developers and the local government to demolish these buildings, they were literally going to put a street through and connect Palm Canyon to Indian Canyon, and that meant demolishing the buildings. So Palm Springs Preservation Foundation reached out to me to write the nomination to take it to the state because we had not been successful with getting a Class 1 local nomination with the city. So we took it to the state, and we had no fewer than 13 letters of support from the local community. It was voted unanimously to approve the nomination and the Town and Country Center to be deemed eligible to be on the National Register of Historic Places.
It was a spectacular victory for us, but a victory that was quickly forgotten. Because just at that moment, a corruption scandal that included all of the drama of an FBI raid on City Hall became front-page news. With that scandal unfolding, we decided against resubmitting the Class 1 nomination to the city. An election was just around the corner, and we hoped for a change in the local political landscape. And that's exactly what happened. So in January of 2016, with a new city council in place, the Preservation Foundation submitted the nomination for the Town and Country Center once again. In an auspicious turn of events, the developer's son-in-law, who a year later would become the president of the company, was quoted in the local newspaper as being open to an adaptive reuse of the center. We could also tell that the newly elected city council members were eager to distance themselves from both the old developer and the old city council. In March of 2016, the nomination breezed through the city's Historic Site Preservation Board, laying the groundwork for its hearing by the Palm Springs City Council. On April 20th, 2016, the City Council designated the center historic by a resounding 4-1 vote. The historic designation of the center was profoundly important and all but guaranteed its eventual rehabilitation.
Councilmember Fote?
Yes.
Councilmember Coors?
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mills?
No.
And Mayor Moon?
Yes.
By mid-2017, with no movement on the rehabilitation of the Town and Country Center, we were becoming increasingly alarmed at the deteriorating condition of the complex. In the preservation community, when a developer allows a building to molder, we call it demolition by neglect. In an effort to shake things up, our lawyer sent a letter asking the city to exercise its legal right of eminent domain in order to take ownership of the center away from the developer. While the city rejected the idea, we made our point that the city could not continue to blame the developer for lack of movement on the center. Even with security measures in place, vacant, deteriorating buildings are particularly vulnerable. And Palm Springs has a sad history of suspicious building fires.
The Town and Country Center is an extremely important building in the history of Palm Springs, and it's an architectural gem. Advocacy took many forms, including letters to the editor, but I have a weekly column in the newspaper, and so we wanted to reach a greater audience and educate them about the merits of the building and remind them of what it could be. If you just have a look at the old pictures, you understand how swanky, how sexy this building was. The feature articles could target the lifestyle audience, not just a preservation audience, and therefore gain broader support. I think it's an incredibly interesting building. You sneak in through this more narrowed entrance and it opens up in front of your eyes, unfolds. And that kind of discovery is fun for tourists and locals alike. It's an iconic piece of architecture by important architects, and it's a mixed-use center. It has a lot to commend it, and that's the reason why people are so interested in saving it.
As you can imagine, over the past 15 years, we've gotten really good at writing letters, even when they weren't needed. But to raise audience awareness in today's online environment with its emphasis on visual communication, letters just aren't enough. So we produced a short film about the Town and Country Center, which premiered to the public during Modernism Week 2019.
When you have something so valuable, so well done initially, you don't throw it away. You restore it, you bring it back, and it will pay dividends beyond anything that any new building could.
And over 15 years, we've attended a lot of city council meetings, and we've even recruited new faces and voices to help deliver the message that the preservation and rehabilitation of the center was important. We felt that the city, the developer, and even the public needed to remain aware that we were still passionate about preserving the center and that we were not going away.
This is a Quincy Jones sketch of the B of A building.
In late 2019, Grit Development hired local architect James Chiaffi to take on the challenges of the Town and Country Center's rehabilitation. Chiaffi's earlier projects in Palm Springs include the successful rehabilitation and adaptive reuse of the historic J.W. Robinson's department store building on South Palm Canyon Drive.
This project was not called the Town and Country Center, it was called the Center. There are signs on the building that still say the Center, and the reason it says that is it's basically in the center of Palm Springs, and it is prime real estate. My first point of contact was with Susan Sequoia Jensen, who wrote the designation, as you know. I said, the reason I'm here is, we worked really well last year on the Captor Plaza restoration, and when I decided to take on this project, I thought of you right away. And so I think it would be a collaborative process.
Think about it. The Town and Country Center was all about collaboration. It was A. Quincy Jones, it was Paul Revere Williams, it was Frey and Clark and Wexler.
The little Wexler building that's back in that center that I called it the Forgotten Wexler. You can walk up to that building right away and know it's special, and you may not know who designed it, but you know it's special. It's got green travertine walls, black and green travertine walls, green travertine floor. It's got a real good glass detail, and it's intact. It's never been altered. So lots of measurements, lots of photo research about the color of the flowers and all, right down to the light fixtures, everything.
We're back into creating a place for people. It's not a place for cars. It has a human scale to it, and it will be timeless.
I think that the large building, the original Town and Country restaurant building, could be another event space that could be well placed in the center of Palm Springs. The big courtyard in the front is a perfect spot for outdoor events that could then move inside. There's kitchen equipment in there and all that, so you could have a ballroom, dining area, and it could float in and out of the courtyard in the front. The Wexler building is also a perfect gallery space. It was originally a stock brokerage building. It's wide open. It has some back room space. It could be workspace or office space, but it has the glass and the presence to be a perfect gallery. We thought possibly even it could be a microbrewery. There are 4 or 5 original apartments in the Town and Country building on the south side of the building upstairs. It could be a perfect little boutique hotel, and we've actually started some designs for that it could be either a hotel or downtown apartments. People that work in this area could live there. Susan's drawings of our restoration work on Palm Canyon and part of the courtyard. And then this is the entry through the Clark Fray into the courtyard. And here's a picture of the courtyard. There's the round building. There's the Wexler. There's the Wexler building.
While this film tells the story from the Preservation Foundation's perspective, many people and organizations contributed to the preservation of the center. I'm gratified that our members were always willing to write a letter, send an email, even show up at City Hall to lend support towards our advocacy. The Palm Springs Modern Committee had their own advocacy, and the Preservation Foundation often coordinated our efforts. The local media, especially the Desert Sun newspaper, showed great empathy towards our cause. I'm very proud of the advocacy, the leadership the Preservation Foundation has shown over these many years. At times, very challenging, but today, the future of the center has never looked better.